Hi, Victoria. Hi, Benita.
Hello, Lee. Hello,
Hey.
everyone.
Hello.
Great.
We saw everybody last time, but I don't see anybody on screen. We can close this, right? What's that? In a Zoom meeting.
Just muting you all as you come in because, noise.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Evelina.
Good morning, Benita.
I guess it's not morning for you all. It's morning for me.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I don't think I've made it to afternoon.
Did you have lunch?
Welcome. I just realized how excited I was to be with y'all again. Just love this conversation and love that we are already sort of deep with each other and with this topic. So super excited to see your faces and continue our journey together. A couple people Kevin was needing to work today, so he'll have to get the recording, and somebody else said it was possible they weren't going to be here, but I think most of us are here. Awesome. All right, somebody is having trouble with a link, so let me help them. Frank and Betsy, okay. All right. Let me see if anybody else is struggling. All right. Gwyneth, I'm just going to give you a heads up that, oh, here she comes, Linda. Great. Okay, fabulous. Okay, so welcome. Welcome to day 2 of our literacy paperwork and contemplation of our end of life. I'm just going to ask you all to take a long, slow, deep breath with me. Thank you. And we'll start with this quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who has helped us over the last number of decades understand, validate, acknowledge and work with our grief. She's the woman who authored the idea of the 5 stages of grief, which has been so helpful for so many of us. She says, real love doesn't die. It's the physical body that dies. Genuine, authentic love has no expectations whatsoever. It doesn't even need the physical presence of a person. Even when they are dead and buried, that part of you loves the person will always live. So I wanted to remind us of the suggested homework assignments last time, and I'm super eager to hear from you all. Some of the suggestions were to talk to family, to talk to possible healthcare agents, to contemplate wishes 1 and 2, to read, research, listen, gather info, and get with your buddy. And another one that's not on here, which I will add, is to work with your checklist. So I'm gonna put some questions in the, I'm gonna stop sharing for the moment so we can see each other, which was a great suggestion from you last time, Evelina. And I'm gonna put these questions in the chat box, which is, please speak up. I'm interested if you have done any one of those things, contemplated wish 1 and wish 2, talk to your family, talk to possible healthcare agents, who's been gathering information, who's gotten with their buddy, and who found the checklist helpful. So go ahead and report in so we can inspire and support each other. And you can unmute if you have something to add.
I can share that I've met with some of us to see to start building the team. And I have commitment from 2 of my beloveds to be on my team here, and a really beautiful beloved in California. And actually 3 of my beloveds here. So I'm feeling like I'm starting to get my team. And that's settling something in my heart really well.
And is the team like a mutual team? Like the team will be each other's people? Like there's sort of cross-pollination there?
3 of us are mutual, yeah. And then we're kind of seeing it as we have our team, the connected team, and then we've each got some others that we add, because some of them have family members that they're adding. But we have a core team that we will be there for each other.
Wonderful, wonderful. Anybody else want to comment on
Oh, I
any?
want to say one more thing. The
Please.
addendum was fantastic. So the first thing I did was go over that and adapt it for me. So now I feel like I've already said 90% of what needs to get said. I
Excellent.
love that. Thank you.
Excellent. Jennifer, I talked to my friend and asked her to be my healthcare agent. Mary Lane, my buddies are also my healthcare agent and I'm theirs. We met and formed a strategy. Checklist is done. I have gotten most of the 5 wishes done. Awesome. Susanna, I've completed wishes 1 and 2. Who else wants to comment? Courtney, please.
So I also found the addendum really, really helpful. I had already done most of my 4 wishes or 5 wishes because I had started on it before. But I found that the addendum just allowed me to really hone in on what I was wanting, and I love that. I'd never considered the idea of a team, and I'm in a women's sadhana group, a meditation group, and our whole goal is living and dying intentionally, and so we already have at our next scheduled meeting to talk about getting a group of us who is going to be willing to do this, be the team for all of us.
That makes my heart so glad. Oh my God, so exciting. I'm curious to hear from people who've talked to family about this in the last week or have planned to and maybe talked to possible healthcare agents. Anybody do that?
I have, Lee.
Great.
I spoke with my son. Originally, he was going to be my sole healthcare agent, but through your training, it's been very apparent. And Evelina and I were going to be one another's. As I was listening, I was like feeling very overwhelmed at taking on so much responsibility, as well as assigning so much responsibility to one person. So I talked to my son and he felt some relief about that. We're still kind of, I see it as really an ongoing process in terms of, because there's just so much research that I'm doing. I'm like, I'm considering like the mushroom soup or donating my body, and I don't know how that, can interface. I'm thinking of developing, in addition to this team, like a care team also. Things like walking my dog or bringing food in or music or whatever, things like that, in addition to kind of helping advocate for my my medical or my demise, my ultimate demise. And I've talked to 5 people, and in addition, including my son, and I've gotten 2, Evelina and Maya Joelle, that were the core group, and then I've got some others who are out of state, my son and one other good friend and a local friend. And I'm also interested in talking a little bit about how the team can interface in terms of different roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
So that's a question I have for you, whenever.
Y'all are serious overachievers here. This is amazing. I love this.
Well, I've been waiting to do this for 3 years. So yeah, and this is my first opportunity to hook up with you.
And I love that we have this week in between and that we're back together again, because it really does allow the process to deepen and sort of, simmer. So Esty, did you have some input?
Yes, I do. I too spoke with my family first, and I was really surprised, but not really, that they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. This is too much for them. And it was like, well, okay. It's like this opportunity has given me a great view of who's there for me. Now, not to say that they won't be at some other point, but they're just, it's not in their realm of influence. The 2 dear friends that one is in California, no problem, no reservations, yes, I'll do it. And then another gal in Montana said, sure, she's very interested, she'll probably sign up for your workshop too. And I made the overture to Michelle in Montana that I would also be on her care team. And so I'm circling right now with my beloved friends in Asheville. And because I'm so far away, there's this curiosity to how I can make it real. I'm overwhelmed by this whole thing. It is, it's timely, it's important, and it's big. It's a huge undertaking. I mean, just like anything in life, but this is like a commitment. I'm signing on the dotted line about what I want to do with my health, if it should go bad, or not should go bad, but just what have you. And yeah, it's causing me to pause and create some strategies. And I'm grateful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Esty, for sharing. I love the piece. I sort of inferred this by your tone, which is like, you know what? Let people be where they are. My family doesn't want to talk about this. I'm going to take my intention and attention and desire somewhere else. And I'm going to find a yes. I'm going to find the people in my life who are a yes. I'm not going to try to change the people who don't want to, or don't have the capacity to, or the skill to, or the interest to, do this. So I love that. What a piece of wisdom you brought there.
In my face.
I see Mary and then Johanna. You got to unmute, Lovey. Mary, you got to unmute. There we go.
Know this. In the conversation from last class, I realized I have 3 healthcare agents, and they're all in separate places. And I don't know, I'm spending time in Asheville, and then also I plan on spending some time in Maui. And I'm going, well, what do I do when I die? And they're all spread all over. And one of the things that we talked about is that to add to the, the checklist and the addendum is we decided to put a list of friends in each location for where we live, so that when our healthcare agents, when I'm going through my medical issue or death or whatever, there's a list of friends, my friends, that they can call from where I'm at. And because we talked about so many times, it's like, who's available and who's going to step up, and and it may not be who you think. And so it's sort of like, call these people, and out of these people, ask who's available to help.
I love that.
Still kind of be able to have my healthcare agents lead the, be the hub and lead the process, but it would be a way to just, who's available at the time, who is willing and able and wanting to step up at the time. So we're adding that to the addendum. This is a list of who to call.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard of that before, and I appreciate you bringing that up, which is, if you have 2 locations that you live in, pretty much like you could probably have 2 sets of entire paperwork, or at least, 2 addendums, which is like, or an addendum to the addendum, which is like, this is my team here, this is my team here. I love that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And also, if you're traveling, I have heard that people, like, this is my wishes for if I'm home, and I'm going to be in Europe for 6 months. And so if something should happen while I'm there, this is the scenario that would be my most ideal if I'm traveling. So good for you. Johanna.
Okay, it's Johanna.
Johanna.
And you asked how it was in speaking with family members. My husband is my primary, but my secondary is my daughter, who lives in Arizona. And I've talked to her repeatedly about it, and she is more than amenable to being my healthcare agent. She was very relieved to hear that we are looking at having a support team as our 3rd category, and that support team was going to be right here, wherever it is that I happen to be, so that she can coordinate with them and rely on them to do some of the things that will need to be done if she can't get there in any quick amount of time.
Yeah.
So that was very reassuring to know that it isn't a solitary task that she's taking on, but a collective task.
I love it.
In collaboration with a lot of other people.
I love it.
Yeah.
Y'all are inspiring me to write an article about this, because or do a video or something, because I haven't really heard other folks talking about the team approach, and it seems like it's really resonating. So I'd love to spend more time with that. And then also, if you want to send me your stories, when you get this up and going, I'd love to incorporate that. So 2 more questions, and then we're going to have to move on to the content for today, because it's going to be fun and juicy. So I have Hika and Anne-Marie and Mike. So Hika, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you. I was also thinking, what stops me from going where I want to go to die? Because animals leave their pack, they leave their herd when they're dying. They choose where they want to do it. So because my family is in Germany, and because my friends are all over the place, like I just talked to my friend who said, yes, I'm on your list. She's in Florida. It's like, why can't I not book that like a vacation, you know, where I can be comfortable and rest and enjoy the last path of it. So that's part of what I'm going to add there. I wanted to see, where do I want to go? It doesn't have to be stagnant where I live now, because, you know, we're supposed to have all the paperwork for the property and all the belongings be done before that anyway. So I can pluck myself out of this, go where I wanted to go, and let it go.
Yeah, I mean, like what, that could be a whole new industry, right? Go vacation dying resorts.
There you
Fabulous.
go.
It's fabulous. All right, Anne Marie and Mike, you're next.
Well, I just wanted to share that we've had lots and lots of conversations about the sort of the criteria for the healthcare agent. And a lot of what has been spoken about, what are the different scenarios? Is this an emergency situation, or is this a, you know, just an end of life, time to leave your body situation? And the different pros and cons of geographic location of the agent and things like that. So I also, like Benita, have really been looking at the whole picture of the burial piece and like who's really going to take care of everything, not just my agent for medical, because this is more than just the 5 wishes. And so I'm curious to see how we cover that today, but I did want to share a resource that I found by going around to a bunch of the links you offered in your resources page. And there's a woman who has been a hospice nurse and is now feeling like her calling around conscious death is to help people really put their affairs in order, not just the way we're doing with this paperwork, but she has something called the What If Workbook. And it's this guide for planning everything you want, but also writing everything down about the names of all the people that need to be contacted for every different reason they need to be contacted, whether it's, you know, the financial aspect or the family aspect or the insurance aspect. And so you can order her book online and fill it out online. Just like you can the 5 wishes, apparently you can, you know, get a PDF version. So I'll put the link in the chat, and people might want to check it out. It looks like it's going to be a really helpful resource to put all the information in one place.
I love that. Yeah. And yeah, thanks. And I can add that to the website for resources. That sounds wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you, Anne Marie. Okay. So I know there's more and we'll have more time to discuss, but we also have new material to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and talk just a minute about our agenda. So it's 2 now. It's 2:20. We'll be doing some wishes 3, 4, and 5, plus the addendum, talking about the signature and notary and storage of the 5 wishes. And then we'll be celebrating our completion of the 5 wishes. We're going to be talking about the advanced care for dementia, the most form, the DNR, and then start to talk about our after death options. We'll take a break, probably just a 15-minute break today because there's so much to do. So again, reminding you to turn off your screen, take care of yourself, roll around on the floor, get food and water. Please take care of yourselves. And then when we come back from break, we're going to do some after death paperwork, some financial overview, and then we're going to talk more about building death positive community and finish up with our buddies and our end of life checklist. So, you know, help me remember, Evelina, you know, the question that or Benita, the question you asked about, like, what does it look like to do teamwork? We can sort of have some space to talk about that later in the day. So I want to also remind you about the resource. Well, some of you may have the paperwork printed, which is great. And so I'm going to ask you to read again, but also the end of life resources on my page where you can get these documents. So if you don't have the document in front of you and I call on you to read, just go ahead and pass, and I can come back to you later. But I've actually took notes last time about who read and who didn't, so I'm able to call on you. So we are now diving into wish 3, 4, and 5. And some of you may have gone ahead, but we're going to start here. And I wonder, Courtney, would you be willing to read the top paragraph there, please, for us? You got to unmute, love. You got to unmute. I'm going to unmute. Well, there you go. Okay, great.
Wish 3. I wish, my wish for how comfortable I want to be. I do not want to be in pain.
Well, read read the italicized piece at the top
Okay.
first, and then you can read the bullets on the left.
Yeah. The next 3 wishes deal with my personal, spiritual, and emotional wishes. They are important to me. I want to be treated with dignity near the end of my life, so I'd like people to do things written in wishes 3, 4, and 5 when they can be done. I understand that my family, my doctors, and other healthcare providers, my friends, and others may not be able to do all these things, and they are not required by law to do these things. I do not expect the following wishes to place new or added legal duties on my doctor or other healthcare providers. I also do not expect these wishes to excuse my doctor or other healthcare providers from giving me the proper care asked for by law.
Okay, let's just have you stop there. So the reason the 5 wishes is different than other end of life or advanced life documents is these 3 wishes. The first wish and the second wish are often in if you've worked with a lawyer, they're often pretty, central, primary to what the end of life direct is. But these 3 wishes are additional, and it makes it sort of holistic. So Andrea, would you read wish 3, the heading there, and also the bullet points on the left?
Wish 3, my wish for how comfortable I want to be. Cross out anything that you don't agree with. I do not want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means I will be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. If I show signs of depression, nausea, shortness of breath, or hallucinations, I want my caregivers to do whatever they can to help me. I wish to have a cool, moist cloth put on my head if I have a fever. I want my lips and mouth kept moist to stop dryness. I wish to have warm baths often. I wish to be kept fresh and clean at all times. I wish to be massaged with warm oils as often as I can be. I wish to have my favorite music played when possible until my time of death. I wish to have personal care, shaving, nail clipping, hair brushing, and teeth brushing, as long as they do not cause me pain or discomfort. I wish to have religious readings and well-loved poems read aloud when I am near death. I wish to know about options for hospice care to provide medical, emotional, and spiritual care for me and my loved ones.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to wish 4 as well, because there's some overlap or they're similar. So Anne-Marie and Mike, would you be willing to read, one of you read the bullets on the left and one of you read the bullets on the right? Let's see. So you all are still muted. Thank you.
My wish for how I want people to treat me. Please cross out anything that you don't agree with. I wish to have people with me when possible. I want someone to be with me when it seems that death may come at any time. I wish to have my my hand held and to be talked to when possible, even if I don't seem to respond to the voice or touch of others. I wish to have others by my side praying for me when possible. I wish to have the members of my faith community told that I am sick and asked to pray for me and visit me.
Wish to be cared for with kindness and cheerfulness and not sadness. I wish to have pictures of my loved ones in my room near my bed. If I am not able to control my bowel or bladder functions, I wish for my clothes and bed linens to be kept clean and for them to be changed as soon as they can be if they have been soiled. I want to die in my home if that can be done.
Excellent. So I think let's go ahead and read wish 5 here as well. So Susie, would you be willing to read the heading and just the bullet points on the left?
Okay. Wish 5. My wish for what I want my loved ones to know. Please cross out anything that you don't agree with. I wish to have my family and friends know that I love them. I wish to be forgiven for the times I have hurt my family, friends, and others. I wish to have my family, friends, and others know that I forgive them for when they may have hurt me in my life. I wish for my family and friends to know that I do not fear death itself. I think it is not the end, but a new beginning for me. I wish for all of my family members to make peace with each other before my death, if they can. I wish for my family and friends to think about what I was like before I became seriously ill. I want them to remember me in this way after my death.
Excellent. Johanna, can you read the bullet points on the right? Make sure to unmute before you start.
I wish for my family and friends and caregivers to respect my wishes, even if they don't agree with them. I wish for my family and friends to look at my dying as a time of personal growth for everyone, including me. This will help me live a meaningful life in my final days. I wish for my family and friends to get counseling if they have trouble with my death. I want memories of my life to give them joy and not sorrow. After my death, I would like my body to be, circle 1, buried or cremated. My body or remains should be put in the following location. For me, that's scattered in the ocean. And the following person knows my funeral wishes. That's Robert, Kimberly, and my team.
Excellent. Thank you. Hika, could you read the 3 sentences down below where there's lines beneath each of them? Don't forget to unmute.
If anyone asks how I want to be remembered, please say the following about me. If there is to be a memorial service for me, I wish for this service to include the following. List music, songs, readings, or other specific requests that you have. Please use the space below for any other wishes. For example, you may want to donate any or all parts of your body when you die. You may also wish to designate a charity to receive memorial contributions. Please attach a separate sheet of paper if you need more space.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So as you can see, wish 3 and 4 are about, what you want more about what you want while you're still alive, how you want to be treated and how you want pain to be managed and other things. So how comfortable you want to be. And then wish 5 sort of starts to move into the after you're gone phase, which we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about today. But it's great that they bring it up. At the very least, people can do this much. You're going to be having the option to do actually more forms and give this more thought, but at least it incorporates it. So I think talking a little bit about the addendum, some of you have probably read on the addendum beyond wish 1 and beyond wish 2. And I'm going to actually switch my screen sharing to the addendum so you can see it. It's a little bit of a juggle here. Okay, here we go. Okay. Is that still sharing? Can you all see that? Hold on, whoops. Hold on, I'm still juggling here. I gotta stop that. Let me do this. Got too many windows open is part of my problem. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I got it there. Okay. Ah! Dang it. Okay, there we go. I was telling Gwyneth today that I need like 2 huge monitors in front of me when I do this. So how comfortable I want to be, I really personally feel pretty specific about this because I'm one of those highly sensitive people that can't eat a lot of different foods and have had, you know, food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities my whole life. And like one of the worst possible scenarios for me, 1 would be to have the television on, and 2 would be to have some synthetic candle in the, you know, blazing in the room. Like that would be just about the worst kind of environment for me. So I put a lot of time and energy into like, hey, this is how I eat. I really love to fast and actually think that fasting is an important end of life process. Like, please don't force food on me. Natural connection, right? Open windows, sky, clouds, earth, ground, breeze, air, super important for me. My mother's on this call. She'll know about this. I hate when sheets are tucked in those hospital corners, makes me crazy. So I don't want you tucking my sheets around my feet. Like, I know this is simple stuff, but like, if I'm not able to do this for myself, it would feel so loving to me if someone else knew this stuff and could meet my needs around this. No TV or radio. Happy to have the space smell good, but please beeswax candles or something else. I've had an altar my whole adult life, and so I'd love an altar to put the things that I care about on it, and please don't use cosmetics. So that's the piece about how comfortable. And then how I want people to treat me is where I put, sort of like speaking to your point, Marilyn, like these are my close friends that I want. And in your case, you might say, these are my close Hawaii friends. These are my close Asheville friends. And I wish to die at home. And then I specifically put, you know, there's definitely some, I would say, religious overtones to the 5 wishes. And I'm, you know, have a very specific spirituality. And so I put soulful, spiritual, deep conversation are welcome, poetry, especially from women, feminist writers. I encourage conversation about my death and dying, about my feelings and needs, and about my depth of connection. Please refrain from God talk or soul-saving talk. Not that really anyone in my life would do that, but I don't know, like, about hospital administrators. Wish 5, some pieces of my addendum about wish 5, everyone has the right to a good death. These are my spiritual practice in life, right? Embodiment, women's mysteries, a rich inner life, integrity, deep relationships, shamanism, and it just helps prepare people who are dealing with me to know what lights my heart up. I love this piece about please provide a loving and comfortable place for the caregivers to go and chat and eat and have fun and whatever, smoke, do whatever they need to do, because I know that caregiving is hard and people need to process. And then I wrote a few things about what I want to happen to my body, which we're going to talk about in the next section a little more, and where my remains go. So let me stop sharing this. Oh my God, the juggle of windows. Whoop. So do folks feel, I'm interested to hear from you, do folks feel at this point that they'd like a breakout? I would suggest a breakout, not necessarily with your buddy, but just another person. Do you feel like you want to break out to talk through wishes 3, 4, and 5? Raise your actual hand if you feel you're a yes to that. Okay. No one feels the need for a breakout here. So then let's just do a couple comments. Any thoughts about wishes 3, 4, and 5 as we are together here in this big room? Any comments on the addendum? Any thoughts, questions, suggestions, comments on wishes 3, 4, and 5? Victoria.
The only one that I have is about what to do with the body. I mean, I do hope to travel, and part of my plans are like, well, if I'm somewhere, what happens with the body? You know, I don't want people, they don't have to cart me all over them to make this. So some of the options of what's available, and my preference is to have it as natural as possible, depending on laws, places, things like that. So that's a complicated part for me as to how to manage that. So any thoughts?
Yeah, great. Let's save that question for the body conversation. It's a really good one. And so it's like a little bit like the 5th wish is, is going to be just a pause for, a little bit until we can get deeper into it. Other thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions about any of these last 3 wishes or the addendum? Mary. You got to unmute, sweetheart.
Well, I have this kind of a parallel thing going on with my mentorship, and I'm working with this piece with my students during the winter. And one of the things that came up is that we talked about these last wishes as being one of the final ways that you can truly honor yourself. And it would be like, how this is how I would feel honored, and all the stuff that came up for everybody in being able to actually put down how they would like to be, honored. And this is a way for honoring themselves. And it's I feel like a really important piece that in these 5 wishes.
Right.
To do it with that kind of consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. It's a gift to yourself, but I would also add it's a real gift to others, because when others get into, the both the receptive mode and the giving mode, they want to know what we want. And if they're, if they're sort of pleasing us, it's so important to the people around us. So, and how many people resonate with some of the sensitivity things that I had said of like, I don't want a TV on in my room, or I don't want, this smelly thing, right? Like, you don't even think about that, but can you even imagine having some of these things that, you know, commercials? I just can't even imagine having like news on in a room when I'm dying. Like, it just sounds like the most horrible thing. Anne-Marie and Mike, you all wanted to say something.
I'm just sitting here laughing because when I gave birth to my one and only child, I was put into a labor room where this guy that used to be on TV with car commercials called Cal Worthington, those commercials ran for the 3 hours I was in there. It's like a terrible memory I have of the birth of my son was listening to Cal Worthington car commercials. And this birth was at 4:42 a.m. So anyway, my question is, I'm very interested in the comment you made, Lee, about how the 5 wishes is really different than other things, because I've talked to a lot of people who say, I've got my will and trust done. I've got my durable power of attorney for healthcare done. I've got my, you know, whatever it is done. And I'm just curious about, like, are there doctors who are offering these 5 wishes, or are there attorneys who know about this, or is it just kind of, you know, it feels like you can do this without hiring an attorney. So I just am curious to talk to, you know, how to, just what you know about that.
Yeah, really, really astute question. Thank you so much. This is an internationally renowned organization, the 5 Wishes, and lots of people know about it, and I'm guessing plenty of people don't know about it. Hospitals have their own advanced life directives because they're trying to really both honor people's wishes and cover their butts, right? Like, it's sort of a both and. My sense is redundancy is better. If you're going to enter into the hospital system, fill out their form too, right? Like, whatever you need to do to like cover your bases, fill out whatever forms you need to. Lawyers do generally speaking do an advanced life directive of some kind along with the will, right? So often people will go to a lawyer and they get this whole bundle, right? They get the financial aspect of the bundle, they get the end of life living will bundle, like there's several things. But from what I've seen, and I certainly could be wrong, there might be some lawyers out there, it's really not addressing the spiritual, emotional pieces, right? It's not saying like, this is what I want my environment to look like in my decline process. It's the 5 Wishes is bringing in some of those emotional, relational, spiritual components in a way, in just a template. And obviously you see that it's not perfect, right? It's like everybody has to customize it, but it's like a neutral enough template that most of us can work with it. So that's why it's different, and that's why it's more holistic. Not to dismiss the fact that lawyers are doing it, but I often, when people say, oh, I've got all that stuff done, I'm like, right, but did you just submit a name and sign on a dotted line, or did you actually think about this? Because there's a difference. And my encouragement is just like, even if you have those things done for a lawyer, you know, contemplate, you know, being able to contemplate this is just an act of empowerment that you often don't get when you're going down the legal road.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go on to the signature page, the notary page. Let me share again my little juggle, toil and trouble. Here we go. Okay, move you all out of the way. Okay, so we talked about the addendum. Let's go to the signature page, which is page 10. And let's see. Grace, are you willing to just read what's there about signing the 5 wishes? Not the Texas disclosure statement, because we'd be here for 2 days, but the signing of the 5 wishes form.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Says, please make sure you sign your 5 wishes form in the presence of the 2 witnesses. I ask that my family, my doctors, and other healthcare providers, my friends, and all others follow my wishes as communicated by my healthcare agent, if I have one and he or she is available, or as otherwise expressed in this form. This form becomes valid when I am unable to make decisions or speak for myself. If any part of this form cannot be legally followed, I ask that all other parts of this form be followed. I also revoke any healthcare advance directives I have made before.
That's interesting.
I have been provided with a Texas disclosure statement explaining the effect of this document. I have read and understand the information contained in this disclosure statement.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Grace. So if we go on to the next page, it has, just a template there for the witnesses and for the notarization. And it says that it's only required for Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, and West Virginia. And so some of you are from different states. A lot of us are from North Carolina. So it needs to get notarized, which you can do at a bank. When I do these workshops in person, I usually invite a notary so that we can all just get everything notarized, because you don't even need to have them finished in order to get them notarized. A notary is just acknowledging that this is you that is signing it. And then at the bottom, we're going to talk about storage in a minute, but they encourage you to cut this bottom part out, which is a 5 Wishes wallet card, so that if you get, if you're somehow unconscious and with strangers, they can look around in your wallet and be like, oh, look, this is the emergency contact and they have a 5 Wishes. I'm not sure that'll happen, but can try. So let me see, Chris, would you please be willing to read the next page, which is what to do after you complete the 5 wishes, if you could read the 4 bullet points on the left.
What to do after you complete 5 wishes. Make sure you sign and witness the form just the way it says in the directions. Then your 5 wishes will be legal and valid. Talk about your wishes with your healthcare agent, family members, and others who care about you. Give them copies of your completed 5 wishes. Keep the original copy you signed in a safe place in your home. Do not put it in a safe deposit box. Keep it nearby so that someone can find it when you need it. Fill out the wallet card below. Carry it with you. That way, people will know where you keep your 5 wishes.
Excellent. Kelly, are you able to read the 3 bullet points on the right?
Yes. Talk to your doctor, is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to your doctor during your next office visit. Give your doctor a copy of your 5 wishes. Make sure it is put in your medical record. Be sure that your doctor understands your wishes and is willing to follow them. Ask him or her to tell other doctors who treat you to honor them. If you are admitted to a hospital or nursing home, take a copy of your 5 wishes with you. Ask that it be put in your medical record. I have given the following people copies of my completed 5 wishes.
Excellent. Thank you. So the standard place to keep them, this might surprise some of you, is in your freezer. And the reason that is because everyone generally has a freezer, usually at the top or the bottom or the side of their refrigerator in their kitchen. And if medical personnel come, and you're running around and, or your loved one is running around, like there it is in the freezer. So you can get a plastic, I don't have it with me, I didn't bring it when I traveled, but you can get a plastic, oh, you have one, Andrea, excellent. So can everybody see Andrea's screen? It's a plastic file folder that snaps shut. I love it. That's perfect. You can get that at any office store, and you stick your papers in there and you can stick it in your freezer, right? So that's one thing to do. I also, on the resource page on the website, there are 5 Wishes puts out these letters, these recommended letters that you can send to your doctor or other, healthcare provider people. I just would email it to them. I mean, these days, everything's electronic. You probably have some email connection to your doctor's office. Like, just be like, here, stick this in my file, right? And the other thing that I do is I keep it in my Google Drive and I link it to the people in my world, right? So my 3 close people, anybody that I've designated as a healthcare agent, if I had children, it would be children. In this case, my mom, I just send them a link. Or, if Google Drive is tricky for some people, I would just email them a PDF, like of all of my paperwork, boom, like I'd combine it all into one PDF. I'd send them an email with a file and it just says, all of my end of life documents. So I cover my bases. I have a lot of redundancy. I make sure people have it in multiple formats. And honestly, like I live in a little cabin in Asheville and I don't have a freezer. And so it's actually in my files, like just in my little files near my little office. So, but if you have a freezer and sometimes you can get a magnet, you've seen these magnets that say matters of life and death inside. And that's like an indication to people who might be coming in like a, EMT or something that might be coming into your house, and to like open the freezer and be like, there it is. What's the story? Oh my God, Gwyneth, thank you. My mom and I realized this. We had a family member that went into a coma and had a whole business relationship with people who were depending on her. And we couldn't find her passwords. And we vowed after that experience to like share our passwords with each other. And it's probably not the safest thing. Like I have it in a Google Doc. But it's at least like I have my mom's password, like all her passwords now. And I wonder if I shared mine with you, Andrea, but, like making sure people in your life have your passwords, like, oh my God, what a nightmare if you don't have that stuff, right? To like turn Facebook off or get into a bank or stop, automatic withdrawals for rent that you're no longer living in a place, like all the, we're going to get into the financial stuff, but sometimes you need people's social security number. Yeah, we're going to talk about that when we talk about the death certificate. All right, so anything else on the signature notary page, the 5 wishes in general, the storage systems, any of that?
Lee, I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
There are now apps for both Android and Apple phones that are called In Case of Emergency. And you can add in on some of those apps that you have these various documents and where they're located or who to contact in order to give them. And if your phone is one that emergency personnel could be able to access, fire department, EMTs all across the country are being trained to look for that information on people's phones.
Excellent. I'm going to write that down. Okay, what else? Any other comments here? Any other thoughts? LastPass, it's a good free website. It puts all your passwords and then you just have one to unlock it. Excellent.
Right, so that you don't have to expose all of your passwords. Also, yeah, in case of emergency, it's called ICE. that, yeah, for emergency contacts, health conditions, medications, allergies, things like that.
Right. Just one. Courtney put this thing where people do digital cleanup, aftermath.com. They have a social media management digital cleanup. That's so interesting. Oh my God, that's another thing to add to our 5 wishes. I do or I don't want my Facebook page taken down. So interesting. Really good questions. Do I want my social media presence scrubbed or honored, or wow, like this is a whole nother layer. So funny.
I've told Tom, if I may, I told Tom that, and you too, that I want it announced on my Facebook page that I've died. Then after a month, you can take it down.
Oh, I don't remember hearing that, but thanks. Now it's recorded.
And on Facebook, there's a thing that says that you can change it to deceased, and then it changes your partners to widow or widower.
Excellent. Well, I want us to give ourselves a big dose of glitter, tingles, congratulations that we got through all of the 5 wishes and all and all of the details, and celebrate everyone and celebrate all of us. So yay. This is big work, y'all. Big work. Glitter fingers. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be done. Not by a long shot. Some of you may not be done. And you can put on your checklist what your next steps are regarding this. I mean, even if it's just notarization or it's a whole bunch of other things, write down on your checklist what's left for you among these 5 wishes, and then give yourself dates. My experience is when we give ourselves a deadline, we're more accountable to it, especially when we give a deadline to ourselves that we ask someone else to help us be accountable to. So take a minute to jot whatever you need to jot down on your checklist about that. We're going to be moving on. I'll give you a couple minutes. Yeah, the chat, exactly, Gwyneth. The chat is going to be emailed out like I did last time with the whole recording, so you have access. Excellent. All right, yeah, so this is a big deal, y'all. I'm just really excited and proud of us all for doing this brave and important work, getting these 5 wishes done. So raise your hand if you are not yet ready to move on. You need more time. Seems like y'all are pretty ready. Okay. Sorry if I missed you. I'm scrolling through screens here. Okay, so I want to remind you of this slide, which is the categories of end of life paperwork. And we're still in the first category, right? We just finished our 5 wishes, also known as advanced care or advanced life directives. Inherent in those 5 wishes is your healthcare agent, or what some people call healthcare power of attorney. And also can be known as the living will. There's a couple of things I want to do here before we move on to the after death and the financial. And one is this a dementia directive. what they say on this website, and it's dementiadirective.org. Gwyneth, if you want to post that, that'd be awesome. They have done, I think they sort of must have modeled in part on 5 wishes, but certainly added their own pieces. What they say is that standard advanced directives don't usually cover dementia. I don't know enough about dementia, but it makes sense to me what they're saying. And yet they're saying dementia is the #1 reason people lose their ability to guide their own care. So usually it's in their 70s and 80s, but sometimes it happens much earlier. So this dementia directive is a way to be sure that if you develop dementia, that you get sort of the care that's closest to what you would want. Families often face difficult medical decisions, and they feel more certain when they have some directives from you. So it can be a standalone document. It can also be sort of a supplement to the 5 wishes. Yeah. What else do they say? So I copied sort of the core piece of what they're saying to put here, but you can find this on their site. They make this freely available, and they don't allow anybody, they copyrighted it so they don't allow anybody to charge money for it. So it's completely available. Started in 2017, so it's fairly new. But they have this page for mild dementia, a page for moderate dementia, and a page for severe dementia. And they have similar choices as the 5 wishes has along these lines, which is, these are the 4 choices. To live as long as I can. I want full efforts to prolong my life. I want to restart my heart if it stops beating. The second one is, I want to receive treatments to prolong my life. But if certain things happen, I would not want to be put on a breathing machine. The third one is to receive care in the place where I'm living, and I don't want to go to the hospital, even if I'm very ill, and I don't want to be resuscitated. Please, let's see, if treatments such as antibiotics might keep me alive longer and could be given in a place where I was living, I would want such care. If I continued to get worse, I would not want to go to an emergency room or hospital. They say here, the reason why I would not want the possible risk and trauma which can come from being in the hospital. And then the 4th choice is to receive comfort-oriented care only, to focus on relieving my suffering, such as pain, anxiety, or breathlessness. I would not want care that would keep me alive longer, right? So this is another piece to consider. If you are, either a young person or a person that has no sort of Alzheimer's dementia in your family, or if you if this just isn't in your awareness, I would say you can put this off. Don't overwhelm yourself with paperwork, stick to the basics. And it's nice to consider this in the sort of suite of options for your folder, for your end of life folder. So that's all I'm going to say about that. You can read it. It's super simple, super straightforward. Now that you've been through the 5 wishes, you sort of know the story here, and you can fill this out on your own. I've done this myself, and it's in my folder. So, okay, these are the last pieces around these end of life documents. And there's one on the pink one on the right is called the most document. And the yellow one on the left is called the do not resuscitate order. So I am going to let myself see this. So the medical, I actually share this. My little juggle, hold on, let me share it differently. Okay. Okay, so the medical order Has anybody encountered this form in dealing with a loved one? Johanna, keep your hand up so I can see. Johanna and Ciel. Okay. Yeah.
I was introduced to this form by my family physician, as well as this one. And we sat in her office and discussed them in great detail. And I completed them right then and there in her office. She has them in my medical file. And actually, she is the one who gave me the 5 wishes and indicated that I ought to, in great detail, complete that and then give her a copy of that as well.
Where do you live?
I found it to be a very concise directive for the medical intervention that I did or did not want to have happen.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very comfortable and appreciative that this form is in my medical file and also in the hospital file where I have been exposed.
Johanna, where do you
I mean,
live?
in terms of being in a hospital.
Johanna, where do you live?
In Weaverville,
Okay.
North Carolina.
So people have been asking in the chat for a doctor that's literate in this stuff. So that sounds like a fabulous doctor you have. So maybe you can type in the chat box who the doctor is.
Okay, I'll put it in.
Thank you. So that sounds like a, a really helpful, sit down with your patient and go through this. Sometimes it's true that people don't see these things because they're not in a hospital journey, like either in a care home or in a hospital process. But it seems to me like it would be helpful for lots of people to have these, particularly as they're aging, right, in advanced age. So you're going to see that there's some redundancy here. But I will say this form is like fluorescent pink and sticks out when it's on a hospital chart or in a hospital file or in a doctor's office file or even in your files in your freezer or wherever they are, and like the EMTs, whoever can get to it really quickly, right? Like I'm not sure that like someone's going to take the time to read the addendums about everything you need if there's like an urgent situation. So I highly suggest that you also fill this out. So it's medical orders for scope of treatment, has your name, has your date that you're filling it out, your date of birth, and then it has sections, right? So section A is, do you want CPR? So attempt it or do not attempt it. Section B is medical interventions. You want the full scope of treatment, limited interventions, or avoid interventions, just comfort measures, right? So you're familiar with these words now as we're saying them over and over again. And this is like a shorthand, like this is a 2-page thing. Section C, the reason they have section A and B in red is that they're like super important, right? Like these are really important to know whether you want this stuff. Antibiotics can sort of be started and stopped. You can put what you want there. Section D, medically administered fluids and nutrition. Like, do you want an IV for fluids? Do you want a feeding tube or do you not want a feeding tube, right? So they get really specific on here. I love this form. Section E, who decided this stuff, right? Did the patient decide this? Did the patient's guardian? Did the healthcare agent? Did the attorney? Who decided? Really helpful. And then there's a signature for your MD, your DO, your PA, which is physician's assistant, or your NP, which is nurse practitioner. And then the phone number. And then you go on to page 2 and it has the contact information and some directions. And then down at the bottom, they have this review date, right? Because if you're in a hospital situation, like say you're in a hospital for 3 months or 6 months and like your condition is changing and you're getting different diagnoses, or you're unconscious and then you're conscious and then you're unconscious, like these things happen. And so this allows the form to be updated and changed Like say you're like, I want all the interventions, and then you have some of those interventions and you're like, oh, heck no, I don't want to go through that again. And then you can update the form. I don't know if they'd start over with the form or they would just like make a new form, but this is their way of tracking what has happened. So that's the most form.
Lee, can
Really
I make
helpful.
a comment about this?
Please.
I've had quite a bit of experience with the most form because both of my parents had to go into nursing homes with what ended up being very advanced dementia. And with each residence where they stayed, I had to go because I was their power of attorney, go and redo the most form every year. But even though they were in a nursing home and all the people there were aware that the most form existed and what it was for, there were several times when my mother was sent to the hospital, even though it was on her most form, that she didn't want to go. Or they tried to give my father antibiotics and he had said he didn't want them. So the most form really wraps back around to the person that you have chosen to make those decisions, because sometimes you have to confront medical personnel who are really set in their ways in order to honor the wishes of whoever you're trying to care for.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Lisa Rose. And I do think it's worth saying again, we talked about this last week, which is the medical, the sort of whole complex of the medical world in general, they're going to lean on and skew towards keeping you alive. And that's their job. That's what they do. They have sort of an ethos about it. There's lots of ethical questions. Like we could have this conversation all day long about the ethical questions of leaning towards dying or leaning towards living. And that's the way our culture is. Hopefully with our ongoing conversations about conscious dying, that's going to change over the coming decades. But in general, it's sort of why we talked about needing a fierce advocate in our healthcare agent, because you're going to be up against a fight sometimes. And I think that's what Lisa Rose is speaking to, is they're going to do what they do. And the best we can do is have the paperwork to say what we want, and we might have to endure what they do anyway. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. My feeling about it is if we have more ways that we're saying it, it's like more opportunity and more chances of getting what we want. Certainly, if as the patient, we are the ones that are unconscious or not able to advocate for ourselves, there's just more of a chance we're going to get things done that we don't want. And then somebody just put really important piece in the chat, which is there's a pretty big difference. Who was it, Grace? I think there's a pretty big difference between you're already in a dying process and everyone's at peace with that, including the EMTs, versus you've had an accident and you're a young person or an able-bodied older person and they're like, oh my God, let's save this person's life, right? So it comes back to the mystery of the 100,000 variables. Sometimes when people are dying, they put these documents, we're going to go to the do not resuscitate form in a second, but they put the most document and the do not resuscitate document like on their bed frame, like on wherever they're lying, like on the wall on top of their head, or on the refrigerator, or sometimes I've even heard people put it on the front door, right? Like you're going to walk into this house, there's a do not resuscitate order. Like that's how assertive and aggressive we have, in our culture we have to be. Okay, so I'm going to go to the do not resuscitate order. And
No, don't go there yet.
Okay.
So before you go there, I've spent a lot of time reading this most form. And I mean, on the very back, it says, most may suspend any conflicting directions in patient's previously executed healthcare power of attorney, living will, or other advanced directive. There is no requirement that a patient have a most. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, are you recommending we have all of these forms for redundancy?
Yeah.
And then are you recommending or explaining, and this, I didn't print the pink version of it, but that the most is really shorthand for the 5 wishes?
The most is really shorthand for wish 2. right?
Okay.
So wish 2 is like, what kind of interventions do I want or not want? And the most is doing it in a way, like when you're dealing with people, you have to speak their language. And so the most document is going to speak the language of the hospitals and the emergency room, like, you know, in shorthand, in a language that they all know. So I think having both are important. That's my sense and advice, is having both. And in terms of you don't need it, I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I understand. I read that too. This idea of like,
there is no requirement for a
Yeah.
patient to have most. Yeah, so it's
And-
a little, all of these things are kind of in some ways contradicting each other. So
I mean, the reason it's fluorescent pink will tell you something, which is they're dealing with a lot of paperwork, a lot of patients, a lot of nuance, and a lot of, you know, case by case, moment by moment variables. So having this neon pink thing in your folder, and especially if they're familiar with it and they can flip to it, absolutely. I think it's really important to have this document. Yeah, there's something else I was gonna say there.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay, so I noticed that this is like the state of North Carolina. So do you have to have let's say you move to a new state, do you have to do another one for that state?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. You know, you reminded me what I was going to say, which is if I were in the same room with y'all doing this in person, I've actually ordered hundreds of these to give out, because you can get them from the state of North Carolina, like for 4 cents a piece. So I ordered hundreds of them so I could like just give them out like candy. I mean, it's not going to be super valid if you don't have your physician's signature on it. And yes, these are North Carolina forms, and you'll have to go. I'm sure that your own state has like a Health and Human Services department, or that you can find these and get them to mail you one. You could maybe even stop into some kind of state office and they might have them there. So look into the resources for your own state. The links I have on my website are for North Carolina. Thanks for asking that. That's what I was forgetting what I was going to say. But don't print it out and like get an original form. Like even if you have to mail off for it, or you know, go to the website, whatever, but like don't print the thing and then like maybe copy it on pink paper or something. Like from my perspective, as authentic and original as this looks like, is going to be familiar for emergency medical hospital emergency room people. Yeah. Okay. Hold on, Mary. Let's go do the DNR and then we can talk about both of these forms. So the DNR is yet again another piece of redundancy, because we just talked about in the most form how you actually have a choice in choice A about being resuscitated. But this is again a standalone, shorthand, easily recognizable form in bright yellow and red that says do not resuscitate. Yeah. And you can have the effective date. Lisa Rose brings up a good point. Should you update these forms every year? I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question, but it seems like a bit of a hassle to try to get the signature of a physician each and every year, especially if you have to pay for an office visit in order to get that signature. But certainly I would imagine it might be worth updating every 5 years, right? At the very least. I'll let you all think about that. And so, you know, I never really thought of having a DNR order like this because I'm not in hospice care, I'm not chronically ill, I'm not dying. And so I thought, oh, you know, do I really need this? And I don't actually have one. I don't have either, personally don't have the most or the DNR. It's on my, I think the most is higher on my checklist to do because of those reasons. I don't want interventions, but a lot of people don't have do not resuscitate. They sort of they get them when they enter into a decline, right? But if you're going to the physician anyway to get the most documents signed, it might be great to have this and keep it in your folder. And as I mentioned, if people are dying, they put it on their door, put it on their wall, put it on their refrigerator. I even wanted to show you another image, which is going to be really impactful. Whoops. Which is this next image on my slideshow. And if you feel really strongly about this, you could consider this. Can y'all see this? It's a tattoo. So people get tattoos on their actual body over their heart that says, do not resuscitate. And this sort of speaks to what I've been trying to say, which is, you know, you got to go to some pretty extreme measures to not get kept alive in our culture. And we have a deaf illiterate culture. So this is an example of someone being like, I feel so strongly about this. Not only am I putting this on my door, taping it on my door, I'm getting a tattoo. And this is probably, I mean, you see this person has a hospital gown. This is probably someone who's dying and is just wanting to be very clear. So let's stop there. I'm gonna unshare and let's talk about this a little more. Courtney.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
So my neighbor has a tattoo and a DNR tattoo. So I'm part of her team, her healthcare team, end of life team. And she's a single woman and does not have any children, and her and most of her siblings are deceased as well. And so it was really important for her to have that on her chest. And so she went actually and got it tattooed on her chest. And the young man who did it said, "Oh my God, really?" And she said, "Yeah, really." And he said, "Well, if you're going to have it on your chest, we're going to make it really beautiful." And it is gorgeous. It is fantastically beautiful. But I think that it was really important for her because, and I know that we talked about this at the very beginning, because she doesn't have a big care team of people who could be there in the hospital with her, visiting, advocating for her. And so so she went and had some minor thing done on her toe or something. I don't even remember. And she showed it to her doctor, had the DNA in the most forms, and he was horrified and told her he wanted to cover it over with a gauze and a tape. And she said, "Absolutely not." And he said, "But this is a procedure that is, nothing is going to happen." And she said, "Great, then it won't apply. But if it does and something goes wrong, I want you to follow this." So I just wanted to reinforce what you were saying earlier about the fierceness of
Oh my God, that's like a face palm. Like, cover it over with gauze and tape. For God's sakes, I just invested all this money and intention. Oh my God, that makes me crazy. Ah! Okay. CL, and then I think Mary, you also had a question. Go ahead, CL.
I just had a comment to make. So just, I was the advocate for my mother over a number of years, and just wanted to say that she had all her paperwork with her doctor, all of her doctors, but because we were in and out of the hospital so often, every single time we went to the hospital, they required us to bring whatever the end of life paperwork was that she had. So just to say, you know, to realize that, like, if you're advocating for somebody or your friend is advocating for you, make sure that you just bring the paperwork to the hospital each time.
Perfect. Thank you, Ciel. Okay, we're gonna just a couple more comments and we're gonna move on to after death. Please, Mary Lane and then Linda.
I just wanted to ask you, I've been carrying this green page that is POLST, and I'm wondering, because I was told it was for the same reason as the most page that you're talking about. Is this just another version of it, or do we need both of these?
I haven't seen that one, but I've heard of it. And I think it's very similar to the most. I mean, if it has these like A, B, C, like these are the things I want, I would say it's probably there's some overlap, and I haven't seen it. So I would
Okay.
almost let you tell us, like, do you think it's the same or do you think it's in a
Well,
different one?
it looks a lot of the same. It's, you know, do you want CPR, you know, the medical interventions? But yeah, and this is what I was told to have as part of it. So I'm wondering if there was two different things. But
Yeah, and it might be that certain parts of the country are more familiar with that form than others. I think on the East Coast anyway, the most form is more common. And so in your situation, Mary, if like the whole Pacific world is more familiar with the green peace post form, then fill that out and fill the pink most form out. I would just cover your bases.
So I don't have to choose between green or pink.
No. Linda. You gotta, yeah. Go ahead and unmute.
Okay. My mother was in her mid-80s when she started seeing Dr. Herb, who I mentioned in the chat. He's now my doctor, but he was hers for the last 10 years of her life. And she had a strange heart condition that kept propelling her to the emergency room, which meant I was up in the emergency room every night too when that happened. And because of her complex issues, he recommended doing the most form, putting it at the top of her chart there, at the top of our medical file, to take that with us when we had to go to the hospital. And so the pink thing was right there at the first thing they'd see when they would open the folder. And I think we did have to update it every year. He hasn't mentioned it to me, but I'm a lot younger than she was, and I don't have that kind of problem. So
yeah, when people get to advanced age, that's where the institutions in our world are more willing to make that front and center. And I hear you have heard that before, you know, like put it at the top of the folder, top of the chart, top of the clipboard, and, you know, again, pasting it onto your headboard. So yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of energy to counteract. So that they're aware of that too, which is why they're saying, like, let's make this visible. Like everything, you know, it's like we have to fight the tide, the rushing river of let's keep you alive at all costs. So, you know, and also it's good. It's why it's helpful to send a PDF to your healthcare agents to be like, listen, I did this paperwork. If you need to bring it to the hospital with you, it's in my freezer, you know, like, so people are equipped, you know, and like UCL said, you know, it might be a good idea in advanced stages to bring the whole thing with you every single time, to just remind people to pull out the fluorescent paper and, you know, keep reiterating. And when we have a more death literate culture, there'll be more nuance around it. But right now it's a bit of a battle. Mm-hmm. Okay, take a breath with me. Thank you. I'm loving your comments, loving being with you all. Okay, so the Bhagavad Gita says, death is just a change of clothing. We're going to move now into choices for our bodies. This is a really exciting topic. There's so much new and innovative emerging ideas happening, which some of you have sent me by email and Facebook. So exciting. So every year, more than 55 million people die worldwide. This is according to the World Health Organization. And in the United States, the environmental impact of burial is pretty significant, right? We have 30 million board feet of hardwood, almost 3,000 tons of copper and bronze, over 100,000 tons of steel, and over 1.5 million tons of concrete going into the ground. In addition to that, we have over 800,000 gallons of embalming fluid, primarily formaldehyde. Cremation isn't much better, right? It releases 500,000 tons of greenhouse gases annually, right? With significant levels of mercury emissions from RT. And more than half of the people who die in the US are cremated. It's become more and more popular. So there's an estimated 500, let's say more than 500 estimated pounds of carbon dioxide per body. So we have lots of options. We do have traditional burial, which continues to be quite popular. We do have conservation burial. We have cremation, we have composting, and we have donation. I have a lot of these resources on that resource page, that sort of private link for you all as attendees. I know not everybody's in North Carolina, but the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary in Mills River, North Carolina is a fabulous green burial option. And if you're not in North Carolina, the Green Burial Alliance is a nationwide organization. It's a collaborative or an alliance collective of green burial organizations. So look up conservation burial or green burial. The composting of bodies is really sort of emergent and new. There's an organization called Recompose. There's also an urban death project in our neck of the woods at Western Carolina University. There's some videos on the site. There's the infinity burial suit, which is what Benita was talking about earlier, which is you put the dead person in this body and then mushrooms sprout out of it and it like decomposes. It gives food for the fungus and decomposes the body. There's also donation of the body. If you're interested in donation to universities for science. There's also, one of the things I find really cool is there's body farms who will take your body for their ongoing research about decay and decomposition because they're needing more information about how bodies decay, and you can donate to a body farm. And there's a whole bunch of other places that accept bodies. Of course, there's organ donation as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about, regarding donations, I have a note here that there are companies that broker that. You can sign up ahead of time. You might have to qualify, and you also may not be able to, in any of these situations regarding donation, you may not be able to have the body at the funeral. So make sure you ask those questions. If you care about having the body at the funeral, it might limit other options. I'm really into this idea of home funerals and home burials. Home burials are more accessible than you think. Like there's certain guidelines, like you can't be within a certain amount of feet from a water source or a natural water source or even a drinking water source. You can't be within a certain amount of feet of a building or house or road. But other than that, like, you'd be surprised. Most of us could bury in our backyards. And there's books out there, there's videos out there, there's lots of resources. I'm going to take you through a little bit of my journey with this. The Center of End-of-Life Transitions, and Gwyneth, if you could put their website, ceolt.org, which is also a Western North Carolina-based organization. They offer a home funeral and death care midwife training, which is an opportunity to understand how to prepare the body and how to do a home funeral. We talked about this last time, but I think it's worth giving this reminder that the oxytocin that floods our body when someone dies also, and other endorphins create this beautiful pause in our normal, everyday, busy lives. And it's why traditions and cultures the world over give, you know, space for mourning and grieving, but it's also such a beautiful time to drop in and be with the dead, be with each other, be with our communities, and honoring those traditions, honoring those systems enhances all of that love and connection with those around us, and then from my perspective, with the person that has passed. So, and then it ripples out to the world. So I think that these rituals and honorings are much more impactful to even the transpersonal, the cultural, because we put all of this into the collective unconscious. It's not just for us, it's not just for the dead, but I think these rituals have ripples and ripples of impact. This is a picture of us over the body of Kimchi Rylander, and I mentioned her last week, but also if you want to check out the Facebook group called Positive Deathing by Kimchi. I have a link to it on my resource page. And she wanted her death to be an educational experience for other people. And so I have all of these beautiful, beautiful pictures. We are in the house that she died in, which belongs to my dear friend Martha, and she's laying on a massage table. She passed the night before, and there's 5 of us, including her sister, tending her body. And what we did is we took a whole entire afternoon. We took probably 4 or 5 hours, and we washed her body, we wrapped her body, we sang to her, we talked to her, and we told her life story to her, what we knew of it. And because her sister was there, she was able to tell the life story before we met her. So she was able to tell the story of her life as a child and in her earlier adult years, and then we would pick up from there and tell stories and rememberings and appreciations and honorings of her and how she impacted our life, and how delighted we were that she had been in our lives and that she had been able to die in our presence. And this was just one of the most beautiful experiences. And for all the 5 people that had died in our community over the course of those 2.5 years, we did that in every single case. The person in the corner there is Ruth Ostrenga from Center of End of Life Traditions, who's been our mentor, and she was there holding space, encouraging, supporting, and just being an overall angel. And they do offer this service, Center of End of Life Transitions. They do offer these services at times like this, and my recommendation is to put money aside to support and pay them, because their service is invaluable and they can't charge for it because they're not quote unquote funeral directors. There's a highly regulated world of funeral directors, but they are in constant service to the conscious dying community. So yeah, powerful experience. We also created a space where the entire larger community could come and sit with Kimchi. This is her in front of what we call the grief altar, and we laid her body out and had it on dry ice, so that she died in February, but still the room is heated. And so we have this whole system where we change out the dry ice and leave some windows open. And for 3 days, nobody left. Somebody was always by her side. We'd never left her alone. So people would take turns sleeping in the space, being in the space, tending the space. And then we'd have visiting hours, really any time where the attendant wasn't sleeping, people could come and be by her body, touch her body, interact with her body, talk to her body. This is a person in front of her body at the altar. The candles were always lit. The flowers were always changed. This is another person, Patricia Allison, in our community who died. And this is her at the altar as well. It's a little bit small to see, but this is a mama and a child up next to the altar of the body of Chuck Marsh, another dearly departed from our community. And again, children interacting with death in bodies, from my perspective, is crucially important to understand the cycles of life, and that death is not the enemy and that death is a part of our community, and dead people are still beloved to us. So that's my perspective and opinion. You don't have to agree. And we also, in the room where the body is held, we have 2 other altars. One altar is a forgiveness altar, and it's an opportunity for us to talk about, to put objects and to sit either together or alone and really talk about what we want to forgive in ourselves, in others, with the person that's dying, or in any context of our life. And there is an ancestor altar, and this is the ancestor altar. We learned these traditions through Soban Fusome, who I mentioned at the beginning. And this is an ancestor altar where we can all bring pictures of our ancestors, and we actually had a bunch of pictures of Kimchi's ancestors there as well to honor her lineage and her life. These were some of the, part of what happens in the 3 days before burial is digging the grave. And that's, we had buried all these people on our land, and we had volunteers in our community dig the grave. And this took days, as you can imagine, because it's a big job when you're doing it by hand. This is a gathering outside of our community center, which is the council hall, of folks coming together for what we're calling a home or community funeral. And in this case, I don't remember whose this was, but whoever it was, the body is laid out in the council hall. And we gathered outside and sang and said prayers, and then went inside the council hall and talked in front of the person clearly and directly, and invited people to speak about how they impacted their life. This was really powerful. Some people reported like this was one of the most powerful experiences they've had at a collective grief process. This is another example of people gathering. This was a bunch of us who had been super close to Kimchi. We, her clothes and books and art supplies and all kinds of things were out in a central area for people who attended the funeral to sort of take away and take a piece and memento of her. And we all dressed up in her clothes. So we like had the wardrobe there, and we all put her clothes on, and just had, you know, had some laughter and joy and connection in the process of this as well. This is a step. We cover the person fully with flowers, and then as we're moving them to the burial site, and then we have this canvas carry, I don't know, I forget what it's called, the canvas carrying case, so that you know, four or five people on one side, 4 or 5 people on the other side can actually carry the body, and we can reuse this canvas tote again and again, because we don't put it in the ground with them. This is a front-on picture of a bunch of people carrying the canvas tote. This is Patricia going to the burial site. And this is the person's body wrapped up in a shroud. We don't use coffins. We use shrouds and wrap it with sacred, let's see, things that have been woven, sacred weavings to keep it together, and then put flowers on it. This is another person by the side of the grave, and this is a larger view with people sitting around and the person's body by the grave as we're doing sort of a burial, a graveside service. And this is a bunch of folks laying, this is particularly Kimchi, into the ground. And I want to share this video with you because this is us singing happy birthday to Kimchi. She was buried on her birthday. She died on February 16th, and she was buried on the 20th. So part of what our mentors say about this 3-day period, and we've been learning from them, they're Buddhist, is that the body, the spirit can stay with the body for up to 3 full days after death. They're still getting oriented, they're making a transition, but in her experience, there's a moment where she feels that the spirit has gone, and it sometimes takes up to that long. So again, we had much to do in those 3 days, again, tending the body, you know, setting up the altars, inviting the community to come sit sit as what some people would call awake. There's another word in the Jewish tradition, but it's an opportunity to be with our own process. It's an opportunity to honor the spirit and the body separation, and also honor our own grief process. So this image, if I'm going to play this video, and it is us at the end of, we had put her body in the ground, people were shoveling dirt onto her body, and we were saying happy birthday to her. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
Happy birthday.
All right, and this last image is of the sort of burial mound after all the dirt has been filled in and sort of decorated with flowers and leaves. And then after some time, we planted a tree on top of this spot. So I want to get a sense from you all. Like, I'm guessing this brought some questions, feelings, issues up for folks. So I'm sort of curious. Let me stop sharing here. Yeah, I'm curious to just hear what is alive for you in any of those ways when you hear about this journey. Feel free to unmute. CL says beautiful.
Hi, Lee and everybody. With the experience I had with my mother, she had this shake one afternoon. Her body shook, and it was not a chill. It was a very unusual. It was very different, and it was noticeable. There was something that was significant about it. She was under hospice care. She crossed over that night, and during the process, I was very curious about that transition, because it doesn't just happen when the last breath is taken. There's a spectrum of what's happening during that process. Hospice said that there's quite a few people that believe that shaking is when the soul leaves the body. So there's different times in different parts of the body that are in that transition. It doesn't all, when you think about birth, there's different aspects happening in that process. We designate it by a breath or other, something they try to be concrete because it's medical, but there's so much else that's happening. And I sensed it in what was happening that day. So being aware of that is part of that process, and it can be beautiful, and there's indications of what's happening from that.
Right. Thank you, Victoria. And just like with birth, there's phases and transitions and stages, right? And different beliefs, different systems believe different things. So not to negate what anybody else thinks is happening, because the truth is none of us really know. And it's like living into the mystery. Other thoughts, other feelings, other comments.
Yeah, I love the idea of a home burial. And although I'm renting, and so, and of course, there's an option to ask a friend, if I could be buried on their property. But what about public lands?
Yeah, no burials on public lands, but that's where I would suggest to you and other people in your position to check out Carolina Memorial Sanctuary. It's a nonprofit. These are also the same, one of them is the same woman that runs the Center of End of Life Transition. So she's dedicated her entire life to conscious dying, and they're keeping that land in Mills River as a conservation burial. And so they're very restrictive of what you can put there, like no embalming fluids. I don't even, if you do a coffin, it's a simple pine coffin, but they encourage a shroud. If you're going to get cremated, you could put your ashes there, but like no containers, like, and the whole thing is like wild. Like, you know, they're cultivating the creeks, they're cultivating the wildflowers, they're pulling back the invasives. I mean, they have full-time people working there. Like, it is just, I would say, you know, and it's about $4,000 to get a spot there, which is less than a traditional burial. So not only are you doing this, you know, conservation thing, you're supporting this local nonprofit. That's where I would suggest. I mean, even where we have, you know, over 300 acres of land, we are getting to the point where we're like, I'm not sure we can endlessly put bodies in this space.
Right. What I loved about it so much, Lee, is just the organic nature of the whole conservancy center, where it was like the forest, the creeks. There was no real, you know, any kind of monuments or, you know, grave sites, so to speak. It was just the bodies were integrated in the environment. So yeah, just beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for your comment. Chris says, I have difficult time being around people that have passed. It brings back really horrible memories from Desert Storm, uncomfortable memories. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, for sure. And, you know, I think in the conscious dying movement, I think trauma is one thing for sure. And how can we normalize death and, you know, bodies in a beautiful way for people who want to and can tolerate that? Absolutely. We all have different roles in the process. Okay, so Stephen Levine, who's done a lot of end-of-life work, he wrote a book called Who Dies? An Investigation of Conscious Living and Conscious Dying. He says, we can heal the heart while the body is dying. And he also says, death does not shatter oneness, it brings us back to oneness. And the distance we are from our grief is the distance we are from our intimate others. So I'd love for us to take a little break at this point. And what I want you to do, I want you to come back at 4:15, so not a full 30-minute break. But I'd love for you to contemplate, if you can, I mean, take care of your needs and whatever else you need to do. But I'd love for you to contemplate what is your ideal to have done with your body. Like, what is your highest ideal, or what are your couple of options that you're considering? Any other thoughts, comments, suggestions before we go? So Courtney, Chuck Marsh died in August of 18. He was at the tail end. Well, no, Patricia was last. He was towards the end of our sort of 5-death process. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, take a break. I'll see you back here at 15 after the hour.